Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're just about at 8:30 here, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I'm an alcoholic. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. That's 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, PA. The food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock every week, and the speaker comes on at 8:30. There's a business meeting for this group. We meet every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7:30. Feel free to come early and join us if you want to get involved with some service. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. If there's anyone at this group for the first time or who's visiting from out of town that would like to introduce themselves on a first name basis, so we can welcome you. Yeah, go ahead.
I am Diane, I'm an alcoholic.
Diane, welcome. Yeah.
Eddie, alcoholic.
Eddie. Welcome. Yeah.
Dave, alcoholic.
Dave. Welcome. Yeah.
Kate, alcoholic.
Kate. Welcome. Nice. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with a working knowledge of the 12 steps and who is willing to sponsor, please raise your hand. So we got plenty of people willing to sponsor. If you are new, grab one of those people after the meeting. We'd love to talk with you, get you some phone numbers, recommend some meetings, get you involved in this thing. Are there any announcements from the floor for the good of AA? Yes, Heather.
My name's Heather, I'm an alcoholic.
Heather.
Tomorrow, Area 59, which is the area that this meeting is placed in, is having their share day. It's being put on by District 68, District 68 and the Young People of AA. But it's put on by that area, It's in Lone, Pennsylvania, so it's a little bit of a hike, but it's worth the drive. And then there's also a fellowship in Coopersburg tomorrow, which is a good time.
Awesome. Good stuff, Heather. Thank you. Anybody else? Anything? Nope. A couple quick announcements from this group. This group does have a sister group, which is a big book study meeting. It meets right up the road Thursdays at 7:30. That's at Salem UCC Church, which is 186 East Court Street. And the coffee for that meeting is on at 6:15. So again, feel free to show up early and join us. We do have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who cannot afford them can put their donations in the jar on the back table, right back there, marked Big Book and CD Donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group at Doylestown. We post the speakers from this group on there. Also speakers we have for a meeting Mondays at 6 o'clock in the room right next to here. It's a speaker step discussion meeting. We also have a Facebook page. You can follow us on Facebook. We post our upcoming speakers there, events, workshops, celebrations that we may have going on, as well as all kinds of other groups and things that are happening in AA. So it's a good resource to have to stay tied in with happenings in AA throughout the area. And with that, I believe Paul is going to come up here. He's going to read our Just for Today prayer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome home. This is the Just for Today prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And now I have Will coming up to read the preamble.
Hi, I'm Will, I'm an alcoholic. Welcome home. Alcohol Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Now I have Kara to come up and read the 12 steps of recovery.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Kara, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. Welcome home, everybody. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. Number 1, we admitted we're powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Number 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Number 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Number 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Number 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Number 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Number 8, made a list of persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Number 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Number 10, continued to take personal inventory, and we were wrong, properly admitted it. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. And number 12, having had our spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now I'm going to welcome Brian up, and he's going to introduce our speaker.
Okay, this group has a 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we'll see that the basket makes its way around. Again, there's no dues or fees for AA membership, but we do have expenses, and your contributions do help us to cover the cost of food, rent, big books, workshops, the food we put out, so we do appreciate it. There's absolutely no smoking on the church property. We have a good relationship with the church. That's all they really ask, is that we keep the property clean, so be considerate of that as you're coming and going from the meeting. Also, we have access to the kitchen for our meeting, you know what I mean, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's the church's, so just refrain from going into the kitchen, just like coming in and out, grabbing whatever. Miss Kay can try to help you out if you need something, but please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, on loan to us from the Freedom in the Park Group. Please help me welcome Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm an alcoholic. It's an honor to be here tonight. My sobriety date is July 5th of 2006. My home group, as Brian mentioned, is the Freedom in the Park Big Book meeting. We meet Monday nights in Valley Forge Park. Beautiful meeting, overlooks, especially this time of year in the fall, overlooks the park. If you're ever in the area, we'd love to have you. And it's crazy to be here tonight. You know, one of the many things AA has given me is just the ability to stand in front of people and speak. When I came into AA, I used to shake and kind of sweat and have this anxiety about public speaking. So it's kind of crazy to me to think about coming from that person to be able to stand in front of a microphone and look at all these people and not, you know, freeze up like I used to. But I should say, like, you know, tonight I hope to articulate a story of hope, a story that tells the change from going from a person who could not live life in any kind of successful measurement that you would use to a person that, you know, my roots grasp new soil today. And I should say that, like, when I grew up in AA, I listened to a lot of these types of speakers. I went to only speaker meetings. I listened to a lot of the tapes. I did the whole Joe and Charlie tapes, all the whole nine, you know. I was like a student of this type of AA. And I always had this kind of imposter syndrome about it, right? I would look at the people speaking, I would listen to the tapes, and I would say, what is wrong with me that I can't get that? Even after doing the steps, even after, years in the program, I would listen and sit in the crowd and say, man, like, I wish I had that. And what I learned was, and I just want to qualify before I tell my story, the truth is that even though I'm a person that had this spiritual experience that took me from being an almost non-functioning human being to somebody that is useful today, I still have a lot of the same stressors that normal people have. I still have the same kind of things in life that go on, right? And that's how it should be. So before I get into my story, I just want to say, if anybody's out there saying, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, like, that was my story to myself that I had. And, going through all kinds of struggles, whether I was 5, 10, 5 months sober, that is as it should be. We have these worldly clamors that are not going away. And what we really have in this daily reprieve from alcoholism is kind of a journey of ebb and flow between going, closer to and away from God. And that's really what I've come to believe today, is that when I come to these meetings, it's important to note we all have these problems. We tell these beautiful stories about how we went from being absolutely useless in life and unsuccessful in all our relationships to being useful members of society. But that doesn't mean that what you have going on in your relationship, what you have going on at work, the Phillies lost today, whatever it is that's stressing you out, that's okay, right? You keep working, and you keep working with others. And that's the key, is to keep getting back up if you're struggling with something. And I'll try to get through some of the things I've struggled with through the years in my story. But just wanted to start out with that. So, for me, when I say I'm an alcoholic, that has meant different things to me at different times in my sobriety, right? What I thought an alcoholic was when I was drinking, was the bum or the homeless guy. That was an alcoholic, right? And it means a totally different thing to me today. So when I say I'm an alcoholic, what I'm actually saying is I'm a person that when I take any alcohol into my system whatsoever, I can't stop. I don't have a stop sign. I don't know if and when it's going to stop, if I'm going to be alive when it stops. And the way this manifested for me was basically when I would try to control my drinking and say, a lot of the things that I would do is, I was like a switcher, right? I would switch from, gin to beer. I'm only doing beer tonight, right? I'm only having the 6-pack and that's it. I'm not going to drink and drive tonight was a big one for me, right? And then, you wake up, the car's in the driveway and the wheel's smashed out and you're like, oh, shit. I did it again, and thank God I'm alive, thank God I didn't kill anybody. That's the way that manifested for me. When the problems started happening with my drinking, I had a lot of the same thoughts that we all have, like, if I just do this, I can manage this. And every single time that I would go out, I would tell myself, tonight's the night, I'm going to have a few. And that night never came, right? Another part of me saying that I'm an alcoholic is this thing that if I happen to get separated from alcohol for a period of time, usually not in my control, I was unable to stay away from it and not pick it up again. So a lot of times I would have, there's a progressive disease. So when I was a teenager and I was drinking, I wasn't a daily drinker right away. So I would drink on the weekend, go do the school thing during the week, and then all of a sudden, I would have some kind of sport tournament on the weekend, something like that. Like, I'm not going to drink anymore because it's getting in the way of what I wanted to do playing baseball. It was getting in the way of what I wanted to do with school. I'm just not going to drink anymore. And all of my efforts to do that were absolutely to no avail, right? And honestly, I didn't even, by the time my disease progressed to the point where all of that, the sports stuff, the kids stuff was over, and I was basically just a person living to socialize and drink, trying to not drink or like be sober or any of that, it didn't even really make sense to me. I got to the point where, and I think this is why it's important to really admit to yourself that you can't drink like other people. If you're not an alcoholic, it doesn't make sense to not drink. You catch what I'm saying there? And I think only alcoholics can understand what I mean by that. Because a normal person would hear that and be like, what are you talking about? It makes sense to not drink sometimes because you have to live life. But if you're not an alcoholic, if you don't tell yourself you're alcoholic, I'm not an alcoholic. Why would I control this? Why would I stop drinking? That doesn't compute in my brain, right? So I didn't have a lot of the experiences where I would, just try to leave it alone for a period of time and test myself. The big book kind of talks about, trying to leave it alone for periods of time and how none of us can really have a success doing that. I didn't even try. Why would I do that? Right? And there's a third part to me saying that I'm an alcoholic, and this is a big one in my home group. You don't get better, so I have the physical part of putting alcohol in my system. I have the mental part where I can't stay away from it. You can't get better from those two parts unless you fix this third part, this spiritual part. And this was the hardest one for me to grasp, that I have a spiritual malady, that I have something on my inside that is driving those two other factors, that if I don't fix that first, I can never get rid of those other two things. I have zero chance of recovering from the physical and mental state of alcoholism without addressing the spiritual state. And that is something that I couldn't even wrap my head around. When I was drinking, when I was newly sober, what are you talking about? When I would hear anything like that, or it would just go out in one ear and out the other. And if you come to these meetings, if you get into the book, if you do the steps, that's the way you learn. The self-knowledge about this stuff and identifying with the speaker and saying yeah, I drank like that and I did those things, that's very, very good and has some value. But without getting to that conscious contact, like you guys are the conscious contact group, without that, there's very little hope. And I think for all alcoholics, the hopelessness is something that we have to swallow in order to be willing to take those steps. To be really defeated is very important. And usually, for people like us, we don't do anything unless the greatest motivator is pain. How many of you in here have gone down the road where you really need to change something and you've been able to change it before the stuff hit the fan? Because I can't, right? And number one on that list is alcohol. So for me, the first time I ever drank was, I was, 13, 14 years old, and, everybody was just doing it. It was just this thing that made me feel okay. And I didn't feel uncomfortable. I didn't even know I was uncomfortable until it was gone, and I was like, what is this? The way that it made me feel when I first drank it, it was just I can't believe that people can be this comfortable living. I'm going to do this again and as often as I can. And that was my experience first with drinking, and it didn't take me very long to accelerate in the progression. I got sober in 2006. I'm 40 now. I got sober when I was 22 years old, so I had about 8 years of roller coaster that escalated really quickly. And just for identification purposes, all of the things happened to me during that time. I had the DUI where I crashed and almost killed myself and a friend. which was not enough to say, hey, maybe you're an alcoholic. Multiple rehabs, multiple detention centers at a youth, jail, loss of jobs, loss of anything, any interest in schooling or sports, all of that, all attempts at relationships with women absolutely crashed and burned. I had nothing in a very short period of time from drinking, and it's all because I was chasing that external feeling that it gave me to fix an internal problem. So, all of this escalated pretty quickly in my teenage years, and I did a lot of it. A lot of my drinking I did with my brother. I had a brother that was 2 years older than me. I idolized him. He was the one that taught me how to drink, how to have fun. Like, this is the greatest thing ever, right? And we're doing our thing. We end up getting in some legal trouble. And this is the motivator, the pain motivator, right? I was able to be separated from alcohol by being arrested, and I'm sure, many of you can relate to that. Like, the separation from alcohol is usually not of our doing. So we get arrested. We're talking to a lawyer, and this is like something that, this is like a serious thing now. I had done the DUIs and the drunk tanks and all the fines and all that stuff. But this time, like, this is serious, right? So I'm like talking to this lawyer. He's like, we're talking to him about what was happening in our lives, and he's just like mortified looking at us like, you guys need to go to rehab. And I'm like, yeah, that'll look good, right? That'll look real good to this judge. So I end up going to, this was not my first rehab, but the time where I actually stopped, I went to this rehab in Kennett Square, and it smelled like the worst smell in the world. I don't know if any of you have been there, but it's like apparently the mushroom capital of the world, and they grow mushrooms out of like manure, and it was like right next to the mushroom farm, and I'm like, this place is miserable, like, oh my goodness. And I thought this was the worst thing ever. The entire time I'm in this rehab, I'm plotting how I'm going to manage better, how I'm going to manage my drinking, and how I'm going to navigate all of this, all of these situations to my benefit. I'm like, and a lot of the same thoughts are going through my head. Okay, only beer, right? Only beer on the weekends. If I get a job, I'll get a restaurant job so I can sleep in, right? We were good at the restaurant jobs. Because I couldn't show up to work like a 9 to 5 I had no hope of waking up for a job at 9 o'clock in the morning. This is my plan, right? And I'm writing letters back and forth to this effect to my brother. He was in Eagleville at the time. They didn't want us together. But we were able to write letters back and forth. And we're like, yeah, man, when I get out, we're going to go here, we're going to do this, all these plans. And I was on county funding to be there. Again, I had no hope of being in any kind of job that would give me some sort of medical benefits. So, my counselor, this guy, Jim, who, man, I owe a debt of gratitude to this guy. I only had been pre-approved for something like 21 days or something like that. And he comes up to me and he was like, Eric, I think you really need another 7 to 10 more days here. And I'm like playing the part. I'm playing, that fake person that we put on. And I'm like, oh yeah. The whole time I was pretending to be the good Samaritan in rehab, like attending all the meetings and taking the notes and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, sounds good. In my heart, it like dropped. I was like, I can't drink for another week. And the weirdest thing happened, and this is one of the most unexplainable things that I have. In that extended week, I don't know when this happened, but at some point in my head it said, if you ever want to like successfully have a life, have a family, have kids, something I always wanted to do, you're going to need to go to AA and actually try it. And I don't know where that thought came from. If anybody's struggling with like the spiritual side of the program and coming to believe, it was recommended to me, like, look up to the things that lead up to you, being separated from alcohol, what led you to find your sponsor, what led you to the AA groups that you go to, and just look at those and see if they really are that many coincidences in a row, right? And like, that's the one that got me, where I'm like, I have never had that thought in my life. That thought does not make sense to me. Even today, that doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? So I get out of there, and the funny thing was, like I was telling you, I was writing letters to my brother, and we had all these plans to drink. We got out within a couple days of each other, and he's like, yeah, I'm doing AA. I'm actually going to try this. And had the same experience. So we get out, it's 2006. We get out and we start going to meetings. We met a bunch of young people that were going around to lots of meetings, and actually the very first group I went to was like a topic meeting with like 10 older gentlemen that I was like, oh my God, my life is over. And it was the most boring thing in the world. But luckily, like the second meeting I went to out of rehab, like I met some people, and then, how it says we create the fellowship we crave. I met other people, and like, oh my gosh, there's people in their 20s in AA, thank God. We met like this little crew of people, and we would go to a meeting every single day. One day we had nothing to do, nobody had any jobs. We went to, we were like, let's see how many meetings we can go to in one day, and we hit 7 meetings in one day. We went through the little book, found all these meetings, ended up at an 11 p.m. meeting at some clubhouse in Center City at the end of the day. We were like, yeah, it's like a record, and all this stuff. And we had a good time. Like this fellowship stuff, it made me feel good, right? But the type of AA that I kind of went into out of rehab, there were a lot of people that had time too, that would just say, yeah, just make a meeting and put the plug in the jug. Just don't drink and make a meeting. 90 and 90 is what you need to be focused on. I remember at one point asking somebody, like, when and how do I do the steps? And they were like, well, I think you're still on your first step, and you should probably wait and do maybe like a step a year. And I was like, okay. I didn't really know what was going on. And I had this little fellowship element, which made me feel really good. The fellowship in AA, I love it, man. It's to this day, one of the greatest gifts I've ever gotten is like, I love AA. I like going to meetings. I like meeting people. It gets me out of my comfort zone because I'm like a real reserved person and like nervous person, but like, I don't know, I feel home here, like that welcome home. Like I feel home when I sit down, even in a strange city, and there's like somebody who just starts reading the preamble or how it works. Like it's just like this calming presence, and I've always kind of felt that. So I'm doing all these meetings, and I actually should mention, in AA, through all of this love for meetings, like I've gotten to go to, I went to a conference in St. Louis, I went to a conference in Florida, I plan to go to Vancouver. There's an international conference next summer. There's all kinds, like this is like a big thing. There's all kinds of stuff all over the world, and you can travel with it and like meet all of these new people that are just like your family. I went to Boston, oh my gosh, in a snowstorm, that was crazy. But get back to where I was in my story. I was like, so we're going to all these meetings, we're doing all this fellowship, we would play poker, we would, we were like chain smoking with the coffee, you know what I mean? Like doing that whole thing and having fun. And I don't know, man, like that didn't have enough depth and weight to combat the spiritual malady that I was dealing with that I didn't know that I was dealing with. It bought me some time. I didn't want to drink. I liked AA. Those are very, very good gifts, and I'm so grateful that I had that. But it was kind of like holding my breath underwater. I still felt uncomfortable. I still felt not good enough. I still felt in every situation that there was something wrong with me, that everybody else had figured out something that I didn't have. And it wasn't only a matter of time. I wasn't the only one dealing with this. So out of this big group that I'm talking about, we had made this little group of maybe, 10 to 12 younger people. I think there's 3 or 4, maybe 3, that are still sober. A few have passed. So we were all kind of in the same boat. I went to a lot of meetings. The legal situation had kind of worked itself out. I got put on house arrest, and they would come over. We would do meetings at the house, stuff like that. I was on house arrest with my brother. We had a good time. I was able to get myself a girlfriend somehow, even though I was still so skittish and nervous. And I don't know what happened. I was very uncomfortable. My brother, who was living with me, decided to pick up a drink because I guess he was feeling the same discomfort, right? And started robbing, started doing all the things within weeks, right? And I'm just watching this train wreck happen. And it's kind of a painful blessing, oh, we're the same. And it took him 2 weeks to go down the tubes. Man, I probably don't want to do that, right? So I was able to get a restaurant job. I was able to get the girlfriend, and I had a little bit of what I thought was a life going. And then he ended up passing away from the disease in 2008, October of 2008. So I was 2 years sober, no God, no steps. I had a few sponsors here and there, was hitting meetings because I liked them. Was getting validation from that girlfriend, by the way. That was the external thing that was fixing me. You know how we do that. And this experience, I was not prepared for this experience. Worldly clamors, life does not stop happening no matter what you're doing. Whether you're 20 years sober, 1 day sober, not sober at all, these things happen. I was not prepared. And instead of going to drinking, I still didn't want to drink. There was something inside of me that saw all this and was just I still don't want to drink. And I go to AA and it's not giving me anything. Why am I doing this? What do I do? Why do I feel this way? She's not fulfilling, the validation I was getting from her wasn't working anymore. And this poor girl ran for the hills, of course. God bless her. There was only one other option. And I'm ready to take myself out. And I'm sitting there with a metal coin in AA, talking at meetings and sharing at meetings about how things are great, playing the part like I was in rehab, right? I would come in here, feel absolutely awful on the inside, share, everybody yeah, I loved your share. Absolutely dying. So after she left me, my brother's gone, I'm living in this apartment by myself. I got finally taken off this house arrest I was on. I don't know why I did this, but I just started driving in my car one night. And I think it's kind of like when an old dog runs away when they're about to die. I just started driving, and I checked into a motel somewhere in southern Maryland, in rural southern Maryland. And I'm this is it. I don't want, my mother had just found my brother when he died, right? I didn't want that, right? So I'm like, all right, some stranger will find me. I'm going to go far as away as I can, and I'm going to take care of this. Because none of this is working. There's no solution. I'm absolutely out of my mind. I can't tell anybody. God forbid I would tell the truth and say, like, I'm struggling. And that was my solution. That was my best thinking without a drink. Was, I'm just going to take it out. So I start writing this note, right? And I have my AA coin there. And I remember like holding my AA coin, holding a suicide note. And I just dropped to my knees in like this, like probably bedbug filled motel. And I was just, the weirdest thing, I just said, I had this moment of clarity and I was just like, God, help me. And started crying. And then I smoked like a half a pack of cigarettes and went to sleep. The next day I went back home, like, wow, that was crazy. And another, coincidence happens where a friend of mine who I grew up with, had known my whole life, he calls me up and he's like, hey, I'm going to rehab. I got a DUI, blah, 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 and tells me the whole spiel, and I'm playing the part. I'm like, oh yeah, I got 2 years sober, I'll help you. And, even though I had nothing to offer, right? And this is the first experience that I had that showed me why working with others is so magical and important, right? Like, even when you're struggling with something, even when you're absolutely failing at something, you can take any kind of solution that maybe you're not even, like, digesting yourself, pass it on, and all of a sudden you get that solution somehow. It is the biggest paradox ever. And this is my first experience with that. So this guy goes to rehab. He gets out. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to hit a bunch of meetings. We're going to do 90 and 90. And I start telling him everything that I had done to that point, which, thank goodness, we've ended up in a different path. And he asked the same question that I did. He goes, this is awesome. We're having so much fun. We're buddies again. Like, it had been a long time. He asked the same question. When do we do the steps? Big question for me. And I was like, yeah, we got to get sponsors. Because, my sponsor's not really that good, so... What if we find a sponsor? So he was like, yeah, this guy at this meeting was talking about a step study group where they're just going to meet up. It's not an AA thing. They were just meeting and studying and or whatever. And they have some openings. Why don't we hook up with them? And he sounded like he really knew what he was talking about. He sounded different, right? And I was like, all right, yeah, let's do it. So that was my first journey towards, the big book, The Program of Recovery in the 12 Steps. 2+ years in, somehow still alive, somehow, I don't know how that happened. And I started going through the steps, we started doing the work, and again, I was kind of still had that imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't know, a lot of this stuff makes sense. Started to get some self-knowledge about what actually it means to be an alcoholic, started identifying, doing that process. And all the God stuff came up, and I was like, I don't know about this part of it, but I'm good at playing that part. This is the theme here. So I'm just going to keep going and see what happens, even though I don't actually believe what you're talking about, that we would say all these prayers. I'm just like, whatever, I'll just say the prayers. Maybe this is where they come up with that saying, fake it till you make it, right? We're doing the third step, and they start talking about that paragraph in the book, and I think this is one of my favorite paragraphs. Every alcoholic's like the actor that wants to control the show. And I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, I think that's me. Because if you gave me one wish, if somebody came up here and gave me a genie in a bottle, right, and I rub it in the genie, come out, what's your first wish? I think I would wish, I want to control everyone's thoughts and actions and outcomes and situations, please. Like, that would be my wish. And I still think like that. That's the messed up part. Like, I absolutely would love to control that every single one of you think I'm the greatest speaker in the world and you love me so much and think I'm amazing looking. You know what I mean? That would be done. You know what I mean? The Phillies would win the World Series every year and the Eagles would win the Super Bowl and like life would be great. That's my dream. And like I really identified with that. And that, to me, that didn't have anything to do with God at the time until it was pointed out, like, aren't you just trying to play God? And I'm just like, wow. So the third step doing that was just like, kind of like, okay, I'm going to step back from being in control a little bit, to the extent that I could at that point. I end up doing this, we're going along in the step process. I'm doing this fourth and fifth step, and I don't know if I learned a crazy amount from my fourth step. I had a really strong fifth step experience where we sat in Valley Green Park in Philadelphia for like 3 or 4 hours. And, I just unloaded on this guy, and I don't know how he sat there. I don't know how he had the endurance to when I work with people, I try to clear my head so that when they talk to me, I can kind of just have God talk back to them, right? But there's like a stamina limit on that. Before the worldly clamors come in and my head starts going, do, 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 do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how he sat there and was just on point in the zone and like pointing out all of these things to me about the control thing, about how I had put myself in these situations to be hurt, or, my side of the street on all of these resentments that I had, all of these fears that I had. And I'm also a big proponent of like, you're only sick as your secrets. Like, I just dumped for the first time in my life, like a bunch of different stuff, and like, he didn't even flinch. He was like, what? That's it? Like, this is the worst stuff in the world. I'm such a piece of crap. I can't believe I'm about to tell you this. But he's like, what? That's nothing. I did this. I'm like, whoa. And like, there's something like so spiritual and unburdening in that. And I figured out that, like, well, I guess it came after the fifth step, but like, the experience that I had he told me to go take an hour afterward and just like reflect. And I didn't even make it out of the parking lot before this like reflection hit me flat in the face. I'm driving along. This is like 2009 or something. I'm driving along after this fifth step, and I had this feeling that I was glad to be me. I didn't want to be anybody else or anywhere else. I was okay. And that was the first time I had ever felt that. I never liked myself. I was always uncomfortable. I hated myself, really. I never felt that in my entire life. And on the way home from the fifth step, before I can even get to a spot to try to meditate on it, I'm in tears. Like, I can't believe I feel like this. I like myself. If I could switch places with Chase Utley, I wouldn't, because I like myself so much right now. It was unbelievable. To go from where I was at, like, my entire life, and to be shown in that moment, like, that's why you drank. That's what you were trying to heal with alcohol or women or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, anything, insert any external, like, stimulating thing. That's what I was trying to heal. And all of a sudden, this program gave it to me in a sustainable way. My goodness. Like, that was the most powerful thing ever. I literally had to pull over. I'm crying. That was the first, and I think, like, I had a bit of an experience with the third step, like I was talking about, but it was more of like an up here experience this is the first time that I felt that part in the book where it says deep down in every man and woman and child is a fundamental idea of God. I felt it and I know it exists in that moment right there. And I've had a ton of subsequent moments since then to reinforce that fact. But that was the first one, and I have not had any problem with the God idea since. All of the the atheism that I had, whatever, when I was younger, all of the hatred I had towards going to CCD and Catholic church stuff, like, it just wiped away. And I'm like, oh. So I had this great experience there, and like a lot of people don't have that monumental experience going through the steps. Like, I work with people, they have that kind of experience with the 9th step sometimes, or it's people that don't even have that experience at all until they like look back on it and they're like, oh my gosh, I did have that experience. But for me, it was like that moment. And I was able to continue on, I should say, like, doing the amends was like something that really helped continue to unburden. And I talked about like why I drank was all that like junk. This process in 4 through 9 of like unburdening is like, to me now, I look back on it and I'm like, I was carrying around a sack of like weights on my back, right? And like, that was why I was making such a heavy going of life. And like the process of taking ownership in 4 and 5 and like making it right in 8 and 9 is like this, just like putting that stuff out of that sack, and like life made me feel lighter. Like I could actually just going around and like talking to people was no longer an issue. Like, like all of these problems that I thought I had that I needed to see a psychiatrist for, like anxiety or like blah, 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 like half of that stuff went away. And like, oh, I'm just an alcoholic. And in the process of like 8 and 9, like one of the biggest resentments I had to my father, like, we didn't have a really good relationship where we would actually like talk. And I don't know if any of you have this experience where like at some point in your adulthood you realize that your parents are actual people and not like there just to serve you, right? Like a little alcoholic child, I was like so self-centered, like they're just there to provide for me at all times, and they have to be perfect. So I sat down with this man who, like, for whatever reason, all these stories I told myself in my head was so at fault for all these things, and I was able to clear my side of the street for like 100 times worse stuff that I did to him. He sat there and explained to me how his father was an alcoholic. About the way they were treated as children, which was like 100 times worse than I got. And we're both like getting emotional, and like that's not a thing that we did. Like we were like the, I'm a man type of relationship. And that was like an unburdening that, similar to my 5th step, was like, wow. Like, I didn't know that I could feel this way about a man in my family and, just be a human among humans with my father, like, be a useful child. Like, that was a new concept. I think the steps are in order for a reason, too, because it's a beautiful design. When I have this experience of like all these this 5th step, 9th step stuff, I'm like, I'm cured. This is great. I was lit up. I was going around telling people that they needed to find God, that they needed the AA program, even if they weren't an alcoholic, right? Trying to chase down people in like clubhouses, being like, you guys are at the wrong meetings. And that comes in with like the 10 and 11 and 12 stuff, where like I ended up in a bad spot. I had a period of time I was on fire, and then ended up in a bad spot from not really having that humility, right? Just starting to get angry at the world that they weren't acting like I thought they should, and I thought my intentions were so good that they should be acting like that whole genie God thing again. And it's so beautiful, right? Like, continue to watch for selfishness, self-centeredness, fear. That's what I needed to be doing. I needed to start my days in a certain way so that I could do that regularly. And most importantly, I needed to work with others, and not in the way that I wanted to. Like, I wanted the badges in AA, like, you get the hour speakers badge, you get the sponsor 10 people at a time badge, maybe you lead a big book meeting badge. Like, that's why I wanted to continue with AA, because I thought I was so great. And I figured out that my intentions were pretty important when it comes to others. And not just sponsoring or helping people in AA, but just being of maximum usefulness to others in life in general. Like, if that's my intention, I can be a good worker in tough work situations. I can be a good parent in, trust me, tough situations when they're, little. I can go to somebody that's struggling with something in an AA, and if maybe I don't have experience with what they're going through, instead of being like, I know the answer, can be able to be like, I actually want to help you the best I can, and I don't have the answer because I've never been through that. And even if I'm your sponsor, I'm going to, refer you to somebody else I know that's been through that. I don't think there's anything wrong with the badges. It can sometimes drive us to do great things. I think Bill Wilson in particular was a guy that loved the badges, right? And he did amazing things in AA. But for me to sustain getting what I need spiritually from helping others, it has to come with the intention of just doing what's best for other people the best I can. And knowing that the best I can isn't perfect, can be messy, can have bumps in the road, and stuff like that. In the beginning I mentioned, kind of going through some things that in my time of sobriety that make me feel like I don't have it figured out. So I think it's almost like a 5-year cycle that I seem to have, where I'll have some sort of crisis that is self-imposed, like a new one every time, that maybe God's just trying to show me these lessons in 5-year chunks, because that's all I can handle. So after I had the first step experience, my life improved greatly. I was able to get back in school, to try to have an actual life. I had built a lot of friendships in AA. I have these great experiences traveling, sponsoring, and just in general, the biggest thing, feeling okay in the world led me to have all those things. But one of the toughest challenges for me was the relationship thing, and romantic relationships, right? There's certain things in life, and I think that's what these little 5-year lessons are, that are really tough lessons. Relationships with romantic relationships, parenting of children if you have them, and money and career stuff, right? These are our biggest things, and that's not just for us. That's everybody in life, right? But those are big things, and there's part in 6 and 7 that talks about character defects, like, that we're only willing to have them removed when we find them objectionable, right? Some of these things are so important to me, I find it objectionable that God would take them. They're too important. I'll take those things. God, you take the rest, right? So I got into what I thought was like a really good relationship when I was like, I don't know, maybe like 8 years sober or something like that. And everything's going great in my life. And I took over back over like control of like this thing because I thought it was so important. I thought it was so important that I couldn't lose this person. And things started getting rocky. And like, we were both in AA, so like it was like, we could tell what was wrong with each other, and that's dangerous. It's like kind of like a blessing and a curse when you have these awarenesses about yourself, because then you start to see them in others, and then you start to tell other people about them. That's the curse of it, right? Especially in a romantic relationship, like no, not good. So like that's crashing and burning, and I'm trying to control it, and I'm getting all the time this is happening, I'm like getting sick. I can feel some of the old behaviors coming back. Some of the character defects that I thought had gone forever, they're coming back. And that's what, that whole daily reprieve thing, right? I am capable of being or living in untreated alcoholism on any given day, on any given month in a row, year in a row. Luckily, that has not taken me back to drinking, but I've had these experiences of just getting uncomfortable again. And I think that's as it should be. I don't think I should be ashamed of that, right? If you're going to be sober for a long time, you're going to have ebbs and flows. You're going to have things that happen. I didn't quite get to the dark place again, but like, bad relationship, she's running for the hills again, old behaviors, and I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. I'm supposed to be a man with a solution, blah, 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 blah. I'm telling myself these things. But luckily I had, the tools of the program and people that I was confiding in, a sponsor. I had more than that, just like spiritual people that I would bounce things off of, like a lot of relationships at this point. And I was like, I'm not doing good enough in 10, 11, 12. I'm going to do like a formal set of steps again. And it was really focused on relationships and the way that those affected me. Like there's a part in the 4th step where it talks about our sex lives and the relationship ideals that we want. And I didn't go deep into that into my first 4th step, because at that time it was just like, why am I so crazy? Why do I want to kill myself type stuff? And I wasn't in a relationship, so none of that really shook out. And my sponsor's a big layers of the onion guy, where he's like, we're just chopping through another layer in the onion. And I did a whole entire inventory basically on relationship ideals, selfishness there, fears there. And, if anybody struggles in that area, this is the hardest advice to get, but it was so true for me, is that, when you work on yourself, the right person will be presented to you. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm such a control freak. That doesn't make sense. Like, I need to make myself look good and make myself act good. And I'm in control of that, right? I can't just be me in the world and be real and have that work out. And I've come to find out that the same thing is true with money, with careers. Just being not worried about it and not controlling it, you're going to get so much more of it. You're going to have a better career. You're going to be better at work. It's another one of those paradoxes, right? Like, just worry about God and you and put the next foot forward, and it just works. It just works somehow. So I do this whole like inventory, did 12 steps again, and man, it really opened my eyes. Like it was tough work that time because I wasn't in so much pain. I mean, I was in pain, but I wasn't like before. And you know, funny enough, I was able to randomly meet someone a few years later, get married, have children. I have 3 girls at home, a house, a wife. Our marriage is like, we actually love each other too. It's weird. You know, because like my friends, when I'm out golfing, they're like, oh, my wife, blah, 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 like complaining. And I'm like, man, people really don't like their spouses. Like, you know, I don't get that. And another challenge, you know, a couple years later, like I'm like kind of fast forwarding here, but like, you know, the relationship stuff works out. A couple of years we're dating. She's not in AA, which is, I think, is better for me. And we end up getting married, having children, right? This is another challenge that threw me for another loop that I wanted to control because it was so important for me to be a good father and to like balance all these things. Like I need to balance, you know, I had a career by this time. I went back to college, got a degree, got a job, like, and like I'm balancing all these things. We decide to have these children. Anybody that has kids out there, like they're a whole nother level of like final boss. In the like at the end of the video game, there's like the final boss. Oh my goodness. They trigger so many things from my childhood that can get me to like live in old behaviors and to want to take control of it because, you know, I really do love them and I want the best for our relationship, our home. It's so important. I have a tough time giving that to God. And I didn't do like a formal like 12-step on this or something like that, but like this is just kind of like the most recent like kind of struggle of just taking a look in the mirror and like realizing that I need help to do this and like letting go of some of that control. And all of these situations, the relationships, like being a parent, work, whatever, they all lead back to that one paragraph I was talking about earlier, like when everybody's trying to be that actor controlling. For whatever reason, I'm constantly like judging situations and vibes and people on whether or not it's going the way I think it should. And when I end up resenting something that doesn't go the way I think it should, I get sick. And that's kind of the spiritual malady of this whole thing, right? And with the kids, it's kind of like they're constantly doing what I don't think they should. That's why it's the biggest, one of the biggest tests, or most recent test. They have the ability, or I shouldn't say they, but me being a parent and trying to stay in that control has the ability to make me sick. And that's a hard thing to think of because I love them so much and my intentions are to be a good parent. So that's probably like the most recent little struggle point that I've had. I think an important thing to note that I might have missed, I know a lot of people out there have like lost loved ones to alcoholism, or maybe not even alcoholism, whatever it is. When I was doing, maybe it was the second set of steps I did, when I did a 9th step, and I did it with my brother, who had been passed away for some time then. And the way that I did it, I know there's a lot of like suggestions out there. I literally just went to like his gravesite and just talked and like talked about my side of the street, because there was a lot of like unresolved pain from and like, you know, selfish, like, why did you do this to me stuff, in ways that I had hurt him that I needed to own. And I thought that relationship was gone. And I do this like this amend where I'm just reading to him from my 4th step and just trying to like quiet and listen at the point where it would be like somebody else's turn to talk. And it's the craziest thing, like when you lose somebody, you don't have to you physically lose them, but you do not have to lose them. Like I felt, not that I was hearing something, but I felt something. And there's sort of a connection that I still have with my brother, that he's still around. And I have trouble articulating it. But one of the biggest things for me is when I'm having trouble connecting with God, he is my bridge. Sometimes I still like don't know exactly, you know, I have this God feeling that I have, but I don't really know what it is. I don't know how to define it. And I feel stupid talking to it. But I don't feel stupid like talking to him. I'll go to his grave and like just talk and just have conversations like, I'm having trouble connecting with God. Like, I'm just going to talk to you. And like, I get answers in the same way I would when I'm talking to God. And it's a weird kind of thing. So like, anybody loses somebody from alcoholism, like, or is having trouble like connecting with a God of your understanding, you can believe in those that we've lost. It's really kind of a beautiful relationship that has developed for me. And a strange thing happens when I turn to it. I get help. And I think that's just because maybe I believe in it more than the like physical God entity that I think needs to be there somewhere. Even though, you know, I just identify with the feeling of God that I have. And that's the truth that I know. So I don't know if that makes sense, but like to me in my head, that makes a lot of sense. Today, like I have this job, and I manage people, and I work from home. This is a big challenge for an alcoholic like me. For whatever reason, it's difficult to. I need the connection of others, is how I should put this. Like, I need to make sure that I get out to meetings when I'm stuck at home all day long and on all kinds of meetings. I'm not able to meet the amount of meetings that I want to. And I think I'm just kind of telling on myself on that because, you know, family schedules, I'm like an Uber driver for the kids to like softball practices and all that stuff. But working with others is so important, and I need the connection of others. And that's another reason I mention these conferences, because if anybody has ever, I just got the little, I thought we started at 8 and I thought it was almost 9. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm rambling anyway. Trying to rack my brain if there was anything I was going to say. It's just an honor to be here. I didn't mean to keep you guys. I really lost track of time there. But this is a great meeting. I love meeting new people. I thank Ron for asking me up here. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, incredible stuff. Again, my name's Brian. I'm an alcoholic. First and foremost, I want to thank Eric for coming out here tonight, delivering an incredible message of hope and recovery to our group here. As was mentioned before the meeting, Food and Fellowship starts every week at 8 o'clock. Feel free to get here early, enjoy the coffee or refreshments we put out. If you want to get involved in service, we appreciate it. This group is all about service. We have H&I commitments. We have a running commitment every Sunday night up in Quakertown. If you'd be interested in doing that, bringing a message to the sick and suffering, see me, see Ron, see any home group member after the meeting. If you want to help out with a little service work right after the meeting, we can always help you out putting away the chairs. It's important for us to thank our speakers. They do come here on their own time and expense, so we usually form a line in the front here, and we do thank our speakers personally. Thanks to everyone for helping out with the meeting tonight. Thanks to our greeters, our readers. Thanks to Ms. Kay for taking care of the kitchen. And let's thank our speaker, Eric, one more time. If you do care to join us, we have a beautiful way of closing down the meeting. We're going to circle up and do the Lord's Prayer. Close down the meeting, as always, with a brief moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic inside and outside of these rooms, followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father,